Right, we're going to talk about the energy blueprint, how you can wake up clear, focused, and fully charged every day, not just those selective days throughout the year. So, wouldn't it be nice to have no more energy crashes, no more brain fog? That would be fabulous. So, here's a little bit about today. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey today. We're going to mention about energy problems, and they are not about motivation, they're physiological. Next thing we'll talk about is your body runs on rhythms, and most people break that daily. It's kind of crazy. The third point is going to be blood sugar and nutrition are driving your energy highs and crashes. Stress and poor recovery are silently draining your energy, and consistent daily habits, not intensity, are the key to sustainable energy. So that's where we're going today. All right, so just a little bit about me. My health and wellness journey started right around 2011 when I found a book, and it was about ancestral health and made perfect sense. I looked like that picture in the middle left, in that brown shirt. I was kind of puffy, and I looked at myself, and I hear this from a lot of my clients, is that they didn't recognize themselves. They weren't. They looked at them, and that's not the perfect vision that they have for themselves, or even like a good version of themselves. And that's how I felt right there. I felt all puffy, filling out my shirt, my shorts were tight. Um, my arms aren't laying against my body anymore. So it was not too pretty of a situation. So after I read that book, I decided that I really wanted to prove to myself after I lost 30 pounds in 3 months, after my brain fog lifted and the job that I had at the time, I could think way more clearly and do way more effectively. And I was way more consistent at things from learning those things that were ancestral based. And we'll talk about some of those things today. And then on the right is the result. I wanted to prove to myself that I was still a viable, vibrant, healthy human being that could do hard things. So I entered a Spartan race. I came off the mountain. I was so jazzed up. I wanted to do it again. Cooler heads prevailed that day. I did go on to do a 5K race, the 8 to 9 mile race, and then the 13-mile race all in the same year. That was 2012. So I earned a trifecta that year. The following year, I did an Ultra Beast, which is a 50K obstacle course race. Really, not to impress anybody, but just to teach myself, understand that I can still do hard things. And that was, when did I do the first Ultra Beast stuff? I was 42 then. And that journey continues today. I am signed up for a race on May 17th, which is not too far away from today, actually May 16th, for another Ultra Beast. So that one will be at 55. So my first Ultra Beast at 55. So why did I do all those things? Well, I wanted to feel better about myself, obviously, and I wanted to be able to serve people. So when I came off that mountain, I really felt like that was a calling for me to, teach people how to do what I did. Lose the 30 pounds, lose the brain fog, lose the fatigue, and be a vibrant person, and even do Spartan races if they wanted to. So over that whole time, I became a Spartan coach, personal trainer, primal health coach, a level 2 master coach, and then a national board certified health and wellness coach. So that was the journey that I was on after I rediscovered myself, basically. So why do I do that again? Well, I have two sons down at the bottom, Max and Elliot. I want to be around for them. And my personal goal always is that if Kayvon or Mike or Max or Elliot ask me to do something, like physically, take a long hike or whatever, I could say yes if I wanted to. So that's always the goal for me, is to be able to say yes to those things if I wanted to. Doesn't mean I would actually do them, but I know that I'm physically able to either do it or say I don't want to do it. Not because I can't, because I don't want to. All right. And I feel like it's also important all along this journey, there was fun involved. All these Spartan races are just like being on a giant playground. I feel like, you know, figuring out what your fun is super important. All right. At the time, Spartan races were that. Down at the bottom left-hand corner, I'm a Harry Potter fan and I'm a Ravenclaw, and I just enjoy all of that stuff. Just being, you know, not somebody different, but just identifying as something alternative than what you already are. So, and a lot of the qualities that I have obviously are Ravenclaw because I took the test, and that's what I am. I think Faye's Ravenclaw too. All right. I also help people with their Parkinson's, actually with their movement with their Parkinson's. So, Joan is down here at the bottom. We've been on a long 8-year journey as her Parkinson's progresses, but with this movement that she's been doing over the last 8 years, it has gotten her probably a lot further than she would have been if she didn't. All right, let's get into the meat here. So people are still tired even when they're trying to do the right things, right? They still have brain fog. They still have afternoon crashes. They still have low motivation. Some people are wired at night, but they're tired all day. That doesn't make sense. Who wants that? I don't want that. This is one of those days where, things were crashing a bit. But that's in the exercise part of that. And we're not talking specifically about that today. So some people are eating healthy, but they still feel stuck. They still are tired, inflamed, low energy, and not losing weight. All right. So they think they're doing all the right things and they're still stuck. And they're eating healthy and they're still stuck. So these are the facts. All right. It's not necessarily a motivation problem. It's a problem with your energy system, how your body is reacting to all the stimuli that you're giving it, whether that's nutrition or stress or exercise or all of these things. And, your body really isn't broken. A lot of these things deal with just getting back into rhythm. All right. What is the rhythm that we should be in to make all of these things function properly? And so we're not tired, so we're not fatigued, so we can do what we want to when we want. So here's a little energy equation I kind of made up myself. Energy equals being in a rhythm, having the right fuel, and the right recovery. There's a lot of little nuances on each one of those three things. But if one of these things is off, then the whole system, your whole body is going to suffer as a result. All right, 1 + 1 = 3, right? That's where most people are, trying to figure everything out. So let's jump into the science a little bit first. I'm not going to go over this whole thing. There's a lot of stuff on here, but basically ATP is your cell's energy currency. So that is what your body needs in order to do what you want it to do. All right, move, think, pump your heart, repair. So basically we're going to put nutrients in. We're going to add a little bit of oxygen. It's going to go into this magical thing called mitochondria. That mitochondria is going to pull some electrons, make some magic happen. It's going to change ADP to ATP. And then that ATP is what goes to your muscles, whatever needs energy, your organs, whatever, gives it those molecules so it can do what you want your body to do. All right, nutrients plus oxygen equals mitochondria equals ATP, which equals the energy that you get from those nutrients. So we've talked about before, when we put fuel in, is that good information for your body or bad information? So if you're giving your body bad information or you're giving your mitochondria bad information, what do you expect it to do you put crap in, you're going to get crap out, right? So putting nutrients, or nutrients in quotes, to your mitochondria, and that's not the information that it needs to function properly, then this ATP system, this energy system, is going to, peter out a lot faster because you're not giving it the right amount of energy. All right. That ATP is this building block of energy for everything. So it is important to keep those mitochondria healthy and fuel them the right way. Because if these guys aren't happy, then you're not going to be able to move very good. You're not going to be able to think very good. You're not going to be able to pump your heart very good. You're not going to be able to repair very well either. All right, so important to give those mitochondria good energy. We talked about rhythms. So here's a rhythm that has been evolving for tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years. This cortisol melatonin cycle. All right. Cortisol gives you energy, and melatonin is going to be the restoration part. So in order for us to go to sleep, our melatonin goes up, our cortisol goes down, so we can get a good night's sleep. The opposite thing's going to happen in the morning. Our cortisol is going to start to rise to give us energy. That is a stressful event, going from sleeping to awake. All right. And we need energy to do that. I've never heard this before, but maybe if you didn't have a little bit of cortisol in there, you wouldn't even wake up. I don't know. I'm just spitballing there. So naturally, this cortisol is going to rise in the morning. It's going to peak, sometime mid-morning and then slowly go down, as eventually as the sun goes down, when your melatonin kicks up and it starts to rise. And then that helps you get to sleep. All right. It peaks in the middle of the night and then starts coming down towards morning. So you can see how this ebb and flow, if you screw up this ebb and flow, you can see how, first of all, your sleep is going to be disrupted, and then your energy is going to be disrupted. Because I don't know about you, if I have a crappy night's sleep, that kind of throws off my whole day. You really have to work hard to kind of rebound from that. So what's our big takeaway from here? The big takeaway from here is to guard your sleep like your life depends on it. Seriously. Somebody asked me today about my, somebody invited me to, one of their talks, and it's 9 p.m. for me when they were going to give their talk. And it's like, that's a little bit past my window. So I don't know how alert and active I can be at that particular time. Not because I don't want to be, but just because I've trained my body I thought about this, at least 3 years to wake up at 4:49 every day and go to bed at 8 or 8:30 every day. Anytime I go outside of that window a lot, then I pay the price for that. And that's, for me, not good. Not good at all. But, and this is a sidebar from this whole thing, if you're on a pretty militant cycle like I am, it is okay if you're 60 to 90 minutes on either side, as a rare occurrence. So, and it's easy for you to get back into the routine of what you used to be or what you did before. So, you don't have to be completely militant, but it's better to kind of put some loose ends on the ends of those things every once in a while when things come up. Like if you have to go to a performance or you have to stay up a little bit for a friend's talk or, um, whatever, late dinner with somebody that you care about. All right. So there's a lot of stuff on here. I'm not going to talk about half of it, but the blood sugar and insulin roller coaster is what most people are on. Probably 90% of the people in this country. Not sure about other countries, but definitely this one. So, what happens in the morning? You eat a high sugar meal, then your blood sugar spikes, then your insulin level has to spike to catch up with that. Then your blood sugar starts coming down. You still have a lot of insulin there. And then there's this cycle that goes on. If there's insulin there with no sugar for it to take care of, then it's going to make you hungrier because it wants that insulin to do something. It just doesn't want it to be hanging out. So you're on this roller coaster of eating every 2 to 3 hours, some sugary thing, and then you're on this roller coaster of insulin and blood sugar. So that is one of the reasons why if your blood sugar level spikes and crashes and spikes and crashes, obviously that's going to happen to your alertness. That's going to happen to how excited or tired you feel at any one time. Obviously, if you get a hit of sugar, you're going to feel more energetic. But when you come off of that, it's easy to get into kind of a cloud of irritability and fogginess and stuff like that. All right. Any questions about this particular one? There's a lot of stuff on here. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, it's a pretty busy slide. But as far as the circadian rhythm and blood sugar, I find myself like this right now. It's 5 o'clock where I am, or five something. It's like I'm just starting to get my energy back. It's not have anything to do with the position of the sun and all that. I mean, I accept the fact that I'm highest energy in the morning, which is pretty new for me actually. I've started to get more routine. But it
Oh, good.
used to be hard for me, but now it's what it is. This part like early evening and then late at night. Is it normal to have different peaks through? Because I see kind of just trails off at night and then just drift off gently to sleep. And I've never been that way. And there's only so much I'm willing to change about myself. You make
Yeah,
one change and it changes that. My most creative hours are later at night. I just know to stay
gotcha.
away from the computer. Is that so much something that nutrition will affect? Or I think no matter what, I believe no matter what, that 2, 3 o'clock time is, I don't know if it's the position of the sun or what it is, but no matter what, I feel that.
You
I
feel a
get,
little bit tired in the afternoon?
it's a matter of I don't feel as creative. I don't feel, I've learned to, if I have to do something creative, I just don't plan it for 2 or 3 in the afternoon. It's just
Gotcha.
something, a lot of boring, busy work during that time because I know I don't
Yeah.
care. That's when I sort out my schedule, and that's when I like start liking posts on Facebook to raise my own algorithm. That's my mind numbing, and I'm okay with that because part of
Yeah.
what we do. Not every minute is so exciting. You know what? That's usually not my best gym time either. The best gym time is now, but I'm spending it with you.
Oh, thank you.
You're my alibi today, Steve.
Yeah, I really feel like that this is, really individual as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But I love what you said there about, okay, you've learned this about yourself. You know that you have to do that creativity stuff in the morning.
Yes,
You know
or at
that,
night, not in
yeah,
the middle of the day.
okay. Or at night. Um, yeah, and it's going to be different for everybody, but learning what your rhythm is super important. So you know that you may not necessarily be I didn't hear you say that you were tired in the afternoon, you just didn't feel like that you were as creative. So in that case, do those creative tasks in the morning and then those monotonous tasks in the afternoon. That makes perfect sense. And then you must be a special person if you get a little jump at the end where you can be creative at the end too. So
Yeah, I'm
I like that.
normally a night person. The morning thing is something I've had to work at. by having a morning routine before I do anything official, to have that time to just appreciate the day, drink water, take in some fresh air. Nothing of any work value. Just exist for a while.
Yeah.
That took a while, but naturally, I'm more at night.
Yeah. But you're not spiking and crashing 4 or 5 times a day though, right?
Yeah, sometimes that's depends. If I have something early to do, I teach virtually. I teach classes in the morning, and I have some business things to do. And sometimes, depending after the classes, if I have maybe a meeting right after that, sometimes I'm dead to the world for about an hour.
Yeah.
That happens. And I don't know if that's food related because sometimes I'll have myself a big breakfast, sometimes I won't, and it's hard to tell. I know when I've had too much sugar just to get the day going. You've talked about this, like
Yeah.
sugar just to replace good calories. I know when
Right.
that happens. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. So I think this is a conversation for another time, but I'm going to add one little thing here. I know, like, after I do this, I'm going to crash no matter what time it is. So when you're like on mentally and, and attentive and, you know, on your game, naturally you're going to have a little letdown after it's over.
Of
So,
course.
when you, I guess, you mentioned that I think you said you were teaching in the morning and then
Yeah.
right after that you have a little lull, which makes perfect sense. That's a stressful event,
Yeah.
and your body's recovering from that. And looking and seeing if that would change by either having a consistent breakfast or not consistent breakfast would be interesting to find out.
Yeah. Cool. All righty.
But it
Yeah.
doesn't sound, it sounds like there's something that triggered this like little lull in energy from you that is more like job related than it is nutrition related.
Well, being in front of the laptop is not my favorite thing. That's why I was off camera. I had to move around, or else I'd have fallen asleep in front of you.
Yeah,
Go,
yeah,
keep
yeah.
going, Steve. Doing great. Like, I'm not going to do that to you. So you got to move around.
Yeah,
The laptop will do it to you. The computer will do it to you. When I'm
yeah,
actually in my living room now, I've got
yeah,
my spare bedroom, which is my home office. Sometimes I just decide to get cozy, sit on the couch, and do something mundane, and I will fall asleep in front of the laptop when that happens.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Good. I appreciate you bringing those things up. But yeah, that's some of those things are deeper conversation things.
Yeah.
All right. I wanted to put this slide in here also because it kind of like makes it a little bit easier to look at than that whole busy mess on the previous slide. So, what's the fix to this problem of this insulin roller coaster? Well, part of the fix is to eat a more balanced diet as far as thinking about fat and protein and fiber instead of carbs. So, if you have a lot of fiber, fat, and protein, then these insulin spikes aren't going to be as big just because there's not as much sugar in there to take care of. That makes sense? So if you don't have as much sugar in a meal, then this is going to maintain a little bit more of a balance. Several ways to do that. Don't eat processed food. Make sure you have a little bit of protein, a little bit of fat with each meal. All right, to kind of smooth out these spikes. All right. Those insulin spikes are stressful events. So that's why in this particular diagram, it says, okay, your insulin spiking, and then you're getting a cortisol shot at the end because your body's like, holy crap. All right. I've used everything. Now that's a stressful event. I need to resupply. So you shoot out some cortisol and that throws some sugar into the system and then throws your insulin up. And you tend to get hungry. So you add some more sugar. So this goes on and on and on and on. This is more diet related than it is and less stress related, although you can get this roller coaster going with a lot of stress too. So we don't want to be in survival mode. For most people, they want to be in fat loss mode. All right. Inflammation is the next crushing topic for a lot of people that they probably don't even know about. All right. Chronic inflammation can really cause chaos in everything in your lifestyle. All right. Where does this chronic inflammation come from? All right. Well, it comes from a poor diet. When you have processed foods and you're on this insulin cortisol roller coaster, insulin sugar roller coaster, that causes inflammation. When you're constantly stressed out about things in your control or out of your control, that causes inflammation in the system. When you have poor sleep, it causes inflammation. When you have a sedentary lifestyle and you don't move around much, that increases inflammation. When you have poor gut health, and I just talked to somebody today about their poor gut health, and it might actually be making their bones brittle. So we have to take a really deeper dive into that to work on this gut health in order for a lot of things to happen, because your gut, some people call the second brain. So we got to treat that just as good as we do the top brain. And the other thing that causes inflammation is environmental toxins. All right. That could be a bazillion different pollutants. It could be a bazillion different chemicals in the air, water, and food. And it's also alcohol, because that's also a toxin. Our body really wants to get rid of alcohol first thing right out of the gate. So we have all of these common causes for inflammation that a lot of people don't realize. I can't remember who it was, but they said, "Oh, I only need 5 hours of sleep a night." In my head, I'm like, that's one of these inflammation triggers. You get less sleep. That doesn't let you recover the way that you should, and then it causes inflammation. Yeah. And a lot of these environmental toxin things, I could probably have a whole talk on just working on your personal environment to get rid of a lot of these environmental toxins. But we we can't do that today. That's a long topic. So, what does this inflammation do to you? All right. We talked about the six different things. There's probably more that contribute to inflammation, but what does that actually do? Well, if your brain is inflamed, then you have memory issues. Then your mental clarity goes down. Then you have poor focus. And you have depression and anxiety from this brain fog and brain inflammation. All right. This afternoon crash that we've been talking about, low energy, fatigue. All right. Inflammation is helping create these things. Mood changes. I mentioned anxiety already. Feeling overwhelmed. And sometimes it's just because we're overwhelmed, but sometimes it's because we have inflammation and we just can't handle as much as we can before. Weakened immunity. If we have all these extra stuff in our cells, whether that be like fluids or just fat, and our body's got to kind of monitor those things, then that can weaken our immunity, because our body's taking care of these cells that we really don't need, but it's still draining some energy off of us to take care of those cells. Inflammation, obviously weight gain. So let me talk about acute inflammation really quick, just to push the point on inflammation and weight gain. So I talk about my dad sometimes about this inflammation part, because I did a 5-day kind of sugar, cleanse with a group of people, and he lost 13 pounds in 5 days. Those 13 pounds are not fat. I can tell you that right now. That's not going to happen in 5 days. But he had a lot of inflammation. When he stopped eating crap, then his inflammation went down. 13 pounds of inflammation in 5 days. That's incredible. All right. That is a major, major amount. All right. Another acute thing. So that was chronic inflammation, but he was able to drain some of that chronic inflammation. Acute inflammation is like when you do a race. So I know when I do a race, especially one of these really long races, I have inflammation. I mean, you can feel it. If you have muscle soreness, that's inflammation. All right. That's not necessarily bad inflammation, but it's just inflammation. So I will gain 5 to 10 pounds after one of these hard races that I do. I lost a lot of fat doing the race, but I gained a lot of inflammation by doing the race also because I'm crawling under stuff and throwing my body over walls and stuff like that. Some things probably most sane 55-year-olds wouldn't do. But that's acute inflammation. That usually drains off of me in a few days. All right. But this chronic inflammation, that's where we really need to worry. It also affects you in your sleep quality. All right. I think as some people describe having difficulties breathing, when they gain weight. All right. Maybe they have more sleep apnea when they gain weight, or maybe they snore more when they gain some weight. So that's all going to affect the quality of sleep that you actually have because of this inflammation. All right. So I'm not going to spend much time on this because this is a lot of busy stuff going on here, but the inflammation cycle, if inflammation rises, our energy drops, we have more brain fog, we get cravings because our body thinks we need more energy to take care of these other things. When we have inflammation, we tend to not make as good choices as we usually do. And then this just cycles back and just cycles back. And this chronic inflammation it's just what it says. It's chronic. It's overtime inflammation. All right. Any questions about this inflammation before we scooch off to the next one? Okay. All right. I'm going to catch up with all of those things in a few minutes, but I want to talk about the weekend effect. So, I talked about this on one of my blog posts, and I think it's really good to hear out loud. All right. So one of my blog posts was your weekend was costing you your whole week. All right. Remember what we talked about before in that our body wants consistency? All right. What happens on weekends for a lot of people? Okay, well, they're not getting up at the same time to go to work like they do during the week. They eat at different times because they don't have to go to work. So they're eating later or earlier. They're staying out later because they don't have to work next day. All right. And this is throwing off that whole cycle that they've created on those 5 days. So you're having these 5 days of, bam, you're on because you have a schedule. On the weekend, there's not as much of a schedule. People sleep in, eat at different times, and your body kind of revolts on that. All right. It disrupts all of those things, causing your body to be a little bit more stressed. So we think we're having a weekend where we're de-stressing when if we're throwing off all these cycles that we're trying to create during the week, then you go haywire for 2 days. No wonder why you feel like crap on Monday because your body's not ready to get back on a schedule because you gave it a new schedule for 2 days, right? So think about that weekend effect. That's why, call me weird or crazy or whatever, but 4:49 comes every day and I am ready to roll. All right, whatever. If I have to not watch a whole hockey game, then that's what it is for that particular day. Although sometimes I use that 60 to 90 buffer zone, but rarely do I see 10 o'clock in any day of the week. That's for sure at night. All right, so how can we combat the weekend effect? Because this is big for a lot of people. All right, keep your sleep and wake cycles to that 60 to 90 minute buffer zone. All right. So let's use me for an example. So if I get up at 4:49, let's try to make sure that we're up by 5:49, almost at the latest. Okay. If I usually go to bed at 8 or 8:30, well, if I'm want to watch a movie or whatever, let's extend that 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes. All right. That's really a stretch for me, but you hopefully you kind of understand what that's all about, trying to keep that as even as possible. As every day, you know, try not to eat different on the weekend compared to during the week. Sometimes it's okay to have a treat meal. I like to call it a treat meal if you only do it once. If you do it every day, then it's a cheat meal. So let's not go to the cheat side. Let's just make it a treat side. So, one day your body's going to be able to recover from that pretty quickly, but 2.5 days of, off the reservation with your eating structure, it's going to throw the whole next week off. All right. Eat your usual size meals. When you go out to eat, you don't have to eat everything that they give you. I saw something last week where, since we had the NFL draft in Pittsburgh, they were talking about, they give you the biggest portions that they can in Pittsburgh. I don't know if that's true or not, but just because they give you big portions doesn't mean you have to eat the whole portion that they give you. All right. Eat a consistent time. This is kind of this is a tough one for a lot of people. Your body likes to be nourished at certain times. All right. And if you have trained that all during the week and then you skip off of that train on the weekend, your body's going to say, hey, what's going on here? And that's going to cause stress for it. All right. Moving your body without destroying it is important too. So these weekend warrior things. So don't go to the gym all week, and on weekends you have 2 hard days. All right. Your body's not going to like that, or you go to the gym all week and then you skip on weekends. All right. That's not consistent for your body. Right. So you're causing stress and inflammation. Hopefully that makes sense of this weekend effect. That just kind of popped into my mind a couple weeks ago when I was thinking about how this weekend cycle differs from all the other days that we usually have. All right. So what about nutrients? We talked about it a little bit, so this is going to be a little hodgepodge here. So protein and fat are going to give you stable energy because you're not going to get those insulin spikes and sugar spikes. Add some fiber in there. That'll even slow down, the process when you have a little bit of carbs. That'll even slow it down even more, so you won't get that spike. So that's great. Your body loves patterns, whether that's sleep patterns or eating patterns or exercise patterns or, whatever. Your body loves to be consistent no matter what. It's just our brain kind of changes that consistency when we, do things that aren't on the Monday to Friday schedule. Micronutrients are important. All right. When we make energy, our body doesn't only need carbohydrates, fat, and protein. It needs all of the nutrients that come along with nutritious meals. All right. That's why you can't just eat protein powder, suck on some slabs of butter and just eat flour all the time. All right. There's not many nutrients in any of those 3 things. And you're not going to give your body the micronutrients that it needs in order to flourish. All right. Here's your guts. So remember, our guts do a lot of things. I'm not going to go into this that much, but that's where you are sending down fuel that you're putting in your mouth. It's going into your guts to be absorbed. All right. So it's important to take care of your guts. This supports mitochondria because it's giving it the raw products in order for it to function properly. All right. If you have a healthy gut, then that actually reduces inflammation. All right. If you eat properly, your guts are actually going to stabilize your blood sugar. All right. It's going to help your digestion, help your absorption. You know, have steady energy all day. And this is always communicating between your guts and your brain. It's always happening. So you want to give your guts good information so your brain has good information or bad information. All right. I like to frame that up when people are, you know, going off the rocker a lot as far as their nutrition plan or what they want to succeed with their nutrition plan. Think about that. Before you put a piece of food in your mouth, ask yourself, is this good information for my body or is it bad information? All right. Garbage in, garbage out. Good stuff in, good stuff out. So think about it like that. It's a good rule of thumb. All right. Movement and energy. So I found this picture. I could not resist not putting it in there. These two couch potatoes. I love that. So I had to put that in there today. So exercising should be energy inducing, not energy draining. All right. Overtraining, especially when you're over 40, is a thing. All right. It is hard to overtrain, but I would say, you know, there's 10, 15, maybe 20% of people that really go all out all the time. How do I know they overtrain? When you overtrain, you are way more likely to get injured. So, if you're taking care of your body, doing the appropriate amount of exercise, and again, that's going to be different for every single person and every single person's goals because you might have a goal to compete. So, that's going to push you to a different exercise pattern. All right. There's something called an active couch potato syndrome. All right. So, what that means is that I'll use Kayvon as an example because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. An active couch potato is somebody that goes to the gym, kills themselves for 50 to 60 minutes, and then sits the rest of the day. All right. Your body doesn't want to do that. All right. It's not designed to sit all day. You know, think about so if you take a throwback to the hunters and gatherers, they probably never sat all day. They had to keep moving, right? So we were those things. So we need to train our body like that. So how do we do that? Micro workouts. You know, if you're sitting at a computer, you get up and you do 10 squats. All right. And then you sit back down. Or I have somebody after every call that this person has, they go for a walk around the house a few times. Right. Those are like mini workouts. So that is going to help with the inflammation, you know, with your insulin, with your sugar load that your body carries. Right? Don't be an active couch potato. And I think Kayvon will remember this too, but I think there was one study where they looked at all the athletes that did a marathon and over 50% of them were overweight. All right. Probably because of this. They go out, do the run, and then they just sit all day. Right? Active couch potato. All right. Sleep is important too. I'm going to go through sleep because we can talk about this for about 20,000 hours. So, two different types of sleep that are important for your recovery: deep sleep, which is the physical recovery part, and the REM sleep, which is the mental recovery part. All right. If you think you can catch up on your sleep, you can't. All right. That's not a thing. All right. You got to get your sleep when you get your sleep for that particular day. All right. I don't know about you, but if I sleep like extra long, I feel like crap all day. My body just doesn't want to like function. It's like, oh, well, maybe we should be sleeping. I don't know. So caffeine's a big thing too. Talk about that in a second. But replacing that caffeine with water, movement, and a protein snack. Okay. The 10-3-2-1-0 rule. All right. This is from our Mission 2022 days. So 10 is when we're talking about sleep, stop drinking caffeine 10 hours before you go to sleep, right? 3, stop eating 3 hours before you go to sleep. So your body has time to digest before you can start making the magic happen. 2, don't do highly cognitive tasks 2 hours before bed. Let me get back to that one. 1, no blue light, no technology 1 hour before bed. And then the 0 part is no snooze hits. But back to the number 2, cognitive tasks. If I'm reading something that's intense right before I go to bed, my brain still has to process that. And if it still has to process that, that's going to disrupt my sleep. All right. I can think of some bad things that are happening, politically. If I get those in my head at night, my sleep is crap. Um, maybe I'm a wuss because I can't get that out of my brain before I go to sleep. But my brain wants to digest that and spit it back out. How is that different than having something consistent? So I'm going to use this Harry Potter example because it's an excellent example for this particular thing. All right. The highly cognitive task thing. So if you watch a movie that you've never seen before, if you never saw the Harry Potter movie before and you watched it 2 hours before bed, your sleep's probably going to be disrupted. Why? Because it's all new information and your brain's trying to process all that information. Okay. Now, that was what, like 1999? When I watched Harry Potter like 20 more times and then I watch it today, I know what's going to happen. My brain doesn't have to actively figure out what's going on in the movie and process that information at night. So it's already done the hard work on that. It doesn't have to work on that. So that's where a highly cognitive task can turn into a non-highly cognitive task over time. So it becomes more relaxing. Does that make sense? It's kind of an interesting example. But it's like reading the book too. If you read the book before, you know what's going to happen, and you're just reading it for pleasure. That probably sounds weird to a lot of people, but that can change from a highly cognitive task to a not so cognitive task. All right. Whew. Okay. Caffeine, I'm not going to talk about too much, but these are the things that it does to you. Poor sleep, high blood sugar spikes, especially when people put a lot of stuff in it. Chronic stress, inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, gut imbalance. All those things can't happen if you chronically drink caffeine. But it's not boosting your energy. It's just borrowing it, right? You're just using something else for energy. You're not sharpening your focus maybe for a second and then it wears off. All right. You may go back to irritability after your caffeine hit wears off. All right. So do you want to be in this state where you're constantly hopped up on something so you can actually function? That doesn't sound like fun, especially if you have to deal with all these other things after it's over. All right. Again, another topic we can talk about for about 10 days. So all of these things, all of these bad things put your body in survival mode. And your body's not going to burn fat in the survival mode. All right. It's got to be in the relaxed mode. So what can we do about it? And we fix each of these problems that we talked about before. All right. Poor diet, processed food, sugar, refined carbs, unhealthy fats. How do we fix that? We eat whole foods. We balance like we talked about before: protein, fiber, and healthy fats. All right. How do we combat chronic stress? A lot of us have that. Well, we need to have management practices so we can do that: deep breathing, meditation. Some people can. I consider prayer meditation for some people if that works for you. It doesn't work for everybody, but some people are very zen when they're in prayer. Although they would say something totally different, but in my mind, that's what's going on. They're meditating. Poor sleep. We talked about having a consistent schedule. All right. With that 60 to 90-minute wiggle room. All right. Well, a thing we didn't talk about with sleep is keeping that environment cool. I don't know if Mike can keep his sleep environment cool or not where he is. I don't know how high up in Peru you are or not, but pretty low.
I'm on sea level, with just making that shift. A month from now, it's going to be freezing in the bedroom.
Yeah, yeah.
A little space heater, we call it Stonehenge, as a tribute to Spinal Tap, that little thing.
What elevation are you at?
I'm a sea level.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And it gets that cool at sea level.
So, everything you've explained about nutrition and gut health, it would take that times 10 to explain the geology of this, the physical geography of this place. It's quite fascinating. But the winters get
Yeah.
different. I lived in Alaska. This is a different kind of cold.
Okay, gotcha.
Temperature
Gotcha.
wise, no, it's just something about it. But I get it.
Yeah, gotcha. I'm gonna have
Comfortable
to get
sleep,
down there
nice
one of these
breeze.
days.
Yeah, nice breeze, something. Yeah.
All right. Three more problems, then we'll finish this one off. Sedentary lifestyle. Obviously, a sedentary lifestyle is going to not do anything with your inflammation. All right. You can't have lymphatic drainage, draining those fluids off of your body if you are sitting all the time. How do we fix that? And move around more. All right. Once you have a meeting, do a couple laps around the table just to, be a little more active. Do a few push-ups, a few squats every time you go to the bathroom. All right. Any of those little things are going to help. Poor gut health. Same thing with nutrition. We add the fiber, we add the protein, we add the healthy fats. That's going to make our gut health a lot better. And especially if you eat fermented foods too, that also helps our gut microflora. Environmental toxins, I'm not going to talk about that too much just because, like Mike said about the climatology of Peru, we can go down the same deepness of a rabbit hole with environmental toxins. But getting clean water, organic isn't perfect, but it's a little bit better than conventional. Avoiding alcohol and, trying to clean up the air in your own environment is super important. So small habits over the long term make big results. All right. So just in summary is the fixes. Food is information. If you remind yourself that all the time, food is information. Am I giving my body crappy information or good information? Prioritize protein. When you prioritize protein, you feel full faster, and it can also diminish how many carbs that your body wants to eat. Timing matters. Timing matters when you eat. Timing matters when you go to bed. Timing matters for a lot of things, as we talked about today. Eat when you're calm. All right. We didn't talk about eating when you're calm, but super important. Take a couple deep breaths before you actually eat so you can kind of focus on that stuff. AM and PM bookends, we actually did talk about a little bit today. Again, that's a whole conversation for a whole different webinar. AM and PM bookends are how are you setting yourself up for a good night's sleep, and what are you doing immediately after you wake up? All right. And the most important word of all of these things for fixes is to be consistent. Consistency will do your body a lot of favors. All right. So what's the next step? So next step is to hop on a call so we can talk about some stuff, get the replay. Our next webinar is going to be about hormones and how hormones actually affect your fat loss. So I think we will have those popped in to the chat window. And here we are. There's Faye said she liked my stickers, so yeah, wanted to put that picture in there. All my cool stickers. I'm into birds too, if you haven't noticed. All right, that's going to be on May 28th, so about 3 weeks from now. And remember, you're not broken. You just need the right strategy. N equals 1. I talk about this with all my clients. N equals 1 means that you are the experiment that you need to figure out what works for you in all of these cases. Some of these things have help no matter what, but the little nuances we need to help you figure out so you can work optimally. All right. So wrapping it up here a little bit, just to tell you a little bit about my programming. So the program I have is 12 weeks long. We have a 30-minute session every week. We talk about goal setting, nervous system techniques. Every webinar I've talked about, I talked about nervous system and how important that is. Maintaining momentum and consistency. If you need health and fitness plans, we can do that for you too. I have a tracking app for all of that stuff. In that tracking app, there is access to your coach 24/7. If I'm asleep, obviously I can't answer, but when I awake, then I can get your questions answered. Kayvon's been part of that. Inner circle access, that's to come, and a lot more. So how does that look over a 12-week cycle? I like to talk, these are not in any particular order because I couldn't tell you that I do n equals 1. Everybody's an experimental 1 and keep to this particular session list. But generally speaking, we talk about goal setting. What is on your bucket list that you want to do? What's on your vision board? How can you turn down the noise in your life? We all have noise. How do we turn it down so we can function as best as we can? Ancestral nutrition, ancestral movement, all of these things, super important to look at. Keeping our workouts 3 times 30. So what does that mean? 3 times a week, 30 minutes. AM and PM bookends. I touched on that a little bit. What do you do right before you go to bed to set your sleep up for success? What do you do right when you wake up to get your day ready for success? Recovery and regeneration. Dana and I have been talking a lot about that lately. Nature connection, super important. We're designed to be outside. Let's get out there. All right. What hobby do you have that gets you outside? Maybe it's running. Maybe it's bird watching. Maybe it's obstacle course racing. Maybe it's all 3. Who knows? Redefining your tribe. So what does that mean? That means like your social ring. What does your people around you, how does that change how your health and wellness is? Play, joy, and gratitude, purpose, and self-care. I think every single solitary thing that I talked about in this webinar today is self-care. All of it. How you exercise is self-care. How you eat is self-care. How you recover is self-care. How you sleep is self-care. It is all self-care. And I feel this way about self-care is that if you do all your self-care right, then you're able to care for those people that you really care about way more effectively than if you're tired and bloated and all of these other things all the time. All right. When I'm miserable, I don't really want to take care of anybody. If I'm feeling pretty good, then I can, work miracles. All right. And that is weird. All right. I don't know what happened to that last slide. Any questions? I'm going to hit escape here and return